I'm Darren Morton and welcome to Happiness by Design. In this episode, we're going to explore why it is that what you focus on affects how you feel. But first, a story. A good friend of mine one time was driving along. He has a bit of a fetish for big motorbikes, and he was riding along on his motorcycle. It's a big 1100cc machine, and he said he'd been out for several hours this particular morning. And as he's driving along, he'd had a late night the night before, and he starts to feel a little weary. And unlike a car where, you can wind down the windows, well, the windows were sort of already down on the bike, and he couldn't turn up the stereo because his bike didn't have one. So he thought, oh, look, I'm only sort of 10, 15 minutes from home. I'll just push on, I should be all right. And so he said that as he's driving along, he just finds getting into that, that terrible state where the eyelids are getting really heavier and heavier. And then next thing he remembers, he comes to life, he wakes up, and there he is with his bike, this big machine, fishtailing in the dirt, the gravel on the side of the road. And he said he was coming clean underneath an overpass, and he looks, and directly in front of him is this huge concrete pylon. And in doing around about 100 kilometres an hour, 60 miles an hour, he thinks to himself, he said, I didn't have time to react, I didn't have time to do anything, but this thought went through my mind, and it said, if you look at it, you'll hit it. And I thought to myself, I don't want to hit that thing, that's all I want. And so he said all he did is he just looked away. And he remembers seeing the tops of trees, and then bang, he hits a tree. That thought that went through his words was quite prophetic. What you focus on, what you look towards, you move towards, and you hit. Now, I should tell you the end of the story. He was so fortunate. He was thrown from his motorcycle. He travelled some 50 metres or so, they say, and only came out with a broken wrist, which was quite remarkable. So that's the good part of the story. But I want to focus in on that thought that he had. What we look towards, what we focus on, we experience and we hit. Because do you know that is certainly the case with our emotional state. What we focus on, what we think about, what we look towards, we feel. Those emotions manifest in our life. And there's a very good reason for that. I'm going to demonstrate why that is the case with Fred, the half head. Now let me open up Fred's head. Right there. Thank you, Fred. Sorry about that. If you look inside Fred's brain, and your brain is much the same as this, there is a part of the brain located right here. It's referred to as the limbic system. And that part of your brain is your emotional hub. It is the abode of happiness. It's the abode of fear. It's our emotional state. It determines how we feel. It's this part of the brain that regulates many of what we refer to as neurotransmitters that are involved in how we feel, our emotional state. Neurotransmitters like serotonin that you may have heard about. So this is your emotional brain. But what we know is that in the front portion of the higher brain, we sometimes call this the neocortex or cerebral cortex. Big names are unimportant for us at this point in time. But portions of this frontal brain, this frontal lobe, actually have nerves or projections leading straight to the limbic system. Now, here's the interesting thing. We have discovered that this front portion of your brain is responsible for what you focus on, for what you give your attention to. And so for that reason, what goes on in this part of our brain, what we focus on, what we give our attention to, what we look towards, feeds information directly to our emotional brain. And this is why our focus influences our feelings. Now here's the anatomy lesson continued. This is intriguing. What we've discovered is not only does this front portion of our brain, this focus, this attention area of our brain, send messages to our limbic system, but our limbic system sends messages back. And so what we create, I call these limbic loops. And so what you can actually have is this cycle of where the attention part of the higher brain primes the emotional brain to feel a particular way, which in turn causes us to then focus in a particular way or look towards certain things. And then you get this cyclic little dynamic going on, these limbic loops. And this explains why it is that in our lives and in our thinking, often we encounter these upward and these downward spirals. Let me give you an example of a downward spiral. You're walking along one night, minding your own business, and there's the television on and there's a program, and you're not even particularly interested in it, but there is a show on break-ins. Okay? And so there's a little image of someone breaking into someone's house. And what happens is this: your frontal part of your brain, attention is captured by this. And so all of a sudden you start to think, and it might be just quite a simple thought like, ugh, that's not so much fun. I don't like the idea of that too much. And that simple thought in this frontal portion of the brain is enough to feed information to the emotional brain, your limbic system. And the little limbic system goes, ooh, I don't like that either. And it starts to create within you a feeling. And at the first instance, it's quite subtle. It might be quite a small, rather insignificant thought. But that feeling, that mild anxiety, if you like, is enough to prime and send a message back to the attention part of your brain, the thinking part of your brain. And so you start to think to yourself, you know what? I don't think I'd like to be broken into. And so then that thought goes back to the emotional brain, and your emotional brain goes, what? We're getting broken into? And so you start to get more anxious and worked up about this, and that primes the thinking part of your brain. And you start to think, yeah, you know what? I think that if I was to get broken into, they'd probably come in through that window over there. And then your emotional brain is going, oh no, they're coming in through that window. And then that feeds back to the attention part of your brain. And next thing, at the end of this, just started with one simple thought in this attention part of your brain, you find yourself at night lying under the covers, eyes, making sure there's no body parts hanging out your sheets, terrified in an anxious sweat. And it all started because of this downward spiral, this limbo loop. I wonder, why do we tuck under the covers? It seems like we have this feeling, as long as all of our body parts are under the covers, then everything will be sweet and no one can sort of do us any harm. I think if I ever get conscripted and have to head out to war, I might take a doona with me or some sheets. I'll be safe then. So this is a good example though of this downward spiral that we sometimes get on. And it happens not just with that kind of circumstance, but little things. We go to work and someone says, hey, the other day I wasn't that impressed with that particular thing, or hey, why isn't that in on time? Or these encounters, or some sort of even a relatively minor criticism that we receive. And what does it do? That it goes to the attention part of our brain, and then it makes us feel a particular way. And then we find ourselves going, oh yeah, and that's not going so well, and oh, that's not going so well. And we actually find that we can get on these downward spirals. And friends, I want to tell you that that's not a good place to be, on these downward spirals. So stay tuned, because after the break, I want to talk about the reverse, turning that to the positive. How can we get ourselves on upward spirals more often? Stay tuned, don't go away. Hi, welcome back. Before the break, we were looking at how your brain is configured. And Fred, our half head, generously donated his brain so that we could see exactly what goes on. In this particular region here, we have the limbic system, your emotional hub. And in the front portions of the higher brain, the neocortex, we have the thinking part of the brain, the part that is responsible for what we give our attention to. And these feed off each other in what I refer to as these limbic loops. And it explains why we get on these downward spirals. Well, a downward spiral is not the place you want to reside for too long. What is good is when we can get on these upward spirals. And we've all experienced these at some point in our life. There's one thing that seems to go well, and it just sort of lifts us, it elevates us, and then that happens, and then that happens, and then that happens, and quite quickly, quite naturally, we seem to sort of spiral upwards, and we have a great day. How can we initiate that on a more regular basis? Well, the secret, the answer I should say, to achieving that is questions. What do I mean by that? Well, see, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling flat, it's hard just to say to yourself, get over it, and change the way you feel. Changing our feelings is a challenging thing, because your limbic system, your emotional brain, is not a thinker. It doesn't reason too well. But the front portion of your brain does. And when we ask ourselves questions, particularly positive questions, what we can do is start to flood the limbic system, our emotional brain, with positive thoughts. And what does that do? Well, it induces positive emotional states, which in turn feeds back in this limbic loop fashion to the front portion of the brain, which therefore makes us think more positively again and look for more positive, focus on more positive things. And so we get this positive loop, limbic loop, of focus, determining feelings, feeding focus, feeding feelings, and up we go. I want to tell you 2 questions that are incredibly powerful and potent for changing our emotional state if we give it the right kind of focus, the right kind of attention. And quite simply, they are this. Number 1, what am I genuinely thankful for that's going on in my life right now? Do you know, if you exercise that, it's positioning yourself, reflecting on things that you're truly grateful for, and even get out and write a list. Write it down. What do I have in my life right now that I'm truly thankful for? What's going on? And if you articulate them, and particularly the process of writing them down, it's all about giving your attention to that, focusing on those things. And that, because of the way we're configured, can change our emotional state. And often that can be all it takes to get us from a position of and perhaps even on a downward spiral to arresting that and starting to bring us back in a more positive loop. So I ask you, what do you have going on in your life right now that you're truly thankful for? Make a list of it. Write it down. Give your purposeful intent and focus to those things, and it can change the way you feel. So that's number 1. What am I thankful for? And here's the other, and I believe this is perhaps even more important. Ask yourself the question, what have I got going on in my life right now that I'm truly excited about? What do I have coming up in the relative near future that I am genuinely excited about? And I want to tell you that if you can't pull out a pen and paper and write down at least one thing that you are genuinely excited about coming up in the relative short term, then I want to confirm for you that you do have a miserable life. All right, but don't get too down on that, because you can change that. It's not hard. I believe, I'm absolutely convicted on this, we should never ever be without something coming up in the relative short term in our life that we are genuinely excited about. Because it's my experience that if we're devoid of that, if we don't have anything that we go, yeah, this month or this next weekend or whatever it may be, coming up, then life does become dull and a bit mundane and a bit boring. So you need something that you are excited about. My wife often says to me, and I agree with her on this, she said, sometimes even the anticipation of something coming up is better than the actual event. And it's true, sometimes this thing's coming up, we get all excited about it, we're all energized, and then the reality of it, it probably wasn't quite as good as we anticipated. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because the process of being excited and having something that sort of is lighting our day leading up to the event serves us well emotionally. Many people have the idea that, hey, excitement's for kids. As we get older, we sort of get over that. We're meant to sort of get into the humdrum nature of reality and knuckle down and work hard. Well, I just say phooey to that. I'm not interested in that at all. I'm interested in play. I'm interested in getting out there and always having, as I said, this thing that you're excited about. Now, if you need help remembering how to get excited about things, you need to visit the masters of excitement and the masters of play. And of course, that is children. And I caught up with some of them just recently. Take a look. There's one thing I love about kids, it's their excitability and their openness to demonstrate that. Now here's my 3 kids. This is Olivia, this
Hello.
is Elijah.
Hello.
And this is Caleb.
Hello.
Now kids, I'm thinking we might play some games. Do you like playing games?
Yeah!
All right, well I was thinking, what about Go Fishy Go?
Yeah!
Go Fishy Go! How about we have a jump on the trampoline? Would anyone here like to go for a swim in the pool?
Yeah!
know, there's no doubt about it. Kids are the masters of play and their life is the richer for it. So there you have it. We can learn a lot from the masters of play, and these kids just have this innate ability to get excited. You know, I think it's no surprise, or it comes as no surprise to me when Jesus says to us, you know, unless you become as children. There's many positive attributes that kids have. And so what we've been discussing, this idea that focus and feelings can feed off each other. You know, use the positive to your benefit. You know, especially focusing on things that you're thankful for and that you're excited about can make the world of difference to your emotional state. Stay with us, and after the break, we're going to flesh this out further, how focus and feelings can change. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the tremendous value from an emotional perspective of focusing on the right things and having something to be excited about and something that you're thankful for, and giving our attention purposefully and intentionally to those things. I caught up with some friends just the other day to ask them what have they got going on in their life that they are truly grateful for and excited about.
I'm excited about my long service leave. I've got 3 months to spend away from work that I enjoy, mind you, but I've got 3 months to spend time away from work with my family, doing all the things that I've been putting off, the things that you always put off for another day.
I've got a visitor coming from Queensland to come and spend a week with me.
I'm going to retire in the relatively short term, so I've got lots of things to do.
I'm getting married in April, so I'm really excited about that.
And that means she'll be leaving, so I'm really excited about that.
I've just booked a flight to New Zealand about an hour ago, and I'm going to New Zealand to be with Patrice over the end of the year. It's the first, we've been dating 2.5 years as of yesterday, and it's the first time that I've been in New Zealand to visit her and her family.
My daughter is getting married, so that is creating a great deal of excitement.
In the relative short term, I'm anxiously awaiting word from a prospective publisher who's been looking at a book proposal.
I'm excited I'm going back to Victoria, and that my husband Lewis Bermudez is graduating, and he's got a position in Victoria to be a pastor.
Probably the break time. Yeah, just go back home and back to Melbourne. Looking forward to that.
And so I put it back to you. What do you have in your life coming up in the short term that you're genuinely excited about? What things have you got going on in your life that you're truly thankful for? You know, the answers to those questions can have a tremendous bearing not just on your emotional state, how you feel, but even your longevity. There was a fascinating little book, and it's worth getting hold of. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It was written by a psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl. Now, Viktor Frankl describes a horrific but an amazing story, and it's the story of a man written by, as I said, Viktor Frankl, who was caught up in the entire Holocaust account. Now, Viktor Frankl found that he was being a participant in this horrific experience, but he was more than that. As a psychiatrist, what he started to do is found himself studying the outcomes and the dynamics about him, and how it was playing out in the lives of the people, and how they would respond to it. Very soon, Viktor Frankl came to a profound conclusion. And what consolidated it for him was in 1939, the year before the war ended. In the week between Christmas and New Year, he said that he noted that a disproportionate number of people died in that period. And he couldn't account for it. He thought to himself, why is it that so many people are actually dying between this Christmas period and this New Year period? Were the food rations different? No. Was the work conditions different? No. Was the weather conditions different? No. Was there any disease states that went around that weren't there previous? No. So what made the difference? Why did so many people pass away during that week period? And then it dawned on him. Amongst the camp, there'd been a hope that they'd be home by Christmas. And when that hope was dashed, the outcome was detrimental to so many of them. You know, the point is this: where there is life, where there is hope, I should say, there is life. And what is hope? Hope is this belief about the future, positive, that there is something to look forward to. There is a purpose here. And Viktor Frankl in his book describes cases where there would be prisoners of war with him who would develop this symptom. He said, like a glaze in their eye, and he knew that, hey, time was short for these people. And when he spoke with them, he found that he could actually restore these people, well, almost to health, or to life certainly, just by instilling hope in them. One gentleman was a scientist, and in this despondent state, he described to Victor how he'd worked on this research project and he had these findings and he thought they were important and people needed to know, and all that was dashed now, that wouldn't matter. And Viktor Frankl talks about how through counselling this man and saying, you need to get that out there. People need to know about that. And he instilled this confidence in this man that he had hope, that there was contribution, that there was a positive an optimism towards the future. And this man once again came to life. Where there is hope, there is life. And hope is an example of positive attitudes towards the future. As Christians, we are never without something that we can be thankful for and excited about. And indeed, that should be a key aspect of our daily prayer life. It was Philip Yancey that once said that prayers typically go thanks, 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 so we get the first part right, but then please, please, please. A better thing for us emotionally would be to reflect in our prayers on the things that we are grateful for, and we have so much. The whole salvation story is, in essence, something that we should always be overwhelmed with, a sense of thankfulness and gratitude. And then at an excitement level, we have something so positive, so energising to be focusing on when we reflect on our prayer and what we have to look forward to as Christians. And so we should make a habit of incorporating those elements of gratitude and excitement, hope, into our daily prayers. So what have we learnt today? Well, we've looked in to Fred the head, and we've discovered that this part of the brain is responsible for what we give our attention to, what we focus on. And it has such a profound effect on the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for how we feel. And these things can work and get into a loop situation, causing either downward spirals or upward spirals. As often as we can, we need to embark upon those upward spirals. And we can do that by asking ourselves the right questions, focusing on things that we're thankful for, focusing on things and giving our attention to things that we're truly excited about. I love one of the quotes from Paul, and this is what he writes. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Do you know, friends, there's plenty of circumstances in this life that we can focus on and give our attention to that do not serve us in any capacity emotionally. There are plenty of things we can give our attention to that will drag us down. We can find the negative if we look for them. There's no doubt about that. But on the same token, if we look for it and we study life, we can find that there are always things that we can identify that we are grateful for and that we can be excited about. And I encourage you to do just that, because you will reap the rewards emotionally. What we focus on is what we will feel. It works that way because that's the way God designed us. I'm Darren Morton, reminding you to delight in God's design.